As a football fan, waking up and remembering your team started 0-2 is pure and simple pain. You bought into all the offseason hype. You played the schedule game and determined your team was winning just about every week. But now, reality set in. Your team sucks.
Come on!
Waking up with your team 0-2 sucks. And when reality sets in, the best way to negate the pain that your team is terrible is waking up pain-free on a luxurious, comfy mattress, which you can get through today's video sponsor, Bear. Listen, I've been sleeping on a Bear mattress for many years now, and from day one, it was a huge upgrade. It was kind of like the Chargers going from Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh. When you get a mattress from Bear, you're getting a premium fiberglass-free mattress designed to upgrade your sleep, improve overall quality of life, and it's conveniently shipped to your door for free. Bear's Sleep Quiz matches you to the perfect mattress, based on your body type and sleep preferences. My wife and I were looking to upgrade from a queen to a king, and to make sure it was as firm as possible. The setup was super easy. We took it out of the box, and then a couple of snips later with some scissors, and we were sleeping on our new mattress. We have our previous Bear mattress now serving as our guest bed, and are currently waiting for a new frame to come in, so that's why our mattress is on the ground. But we honestly don't care right now, because the king size comfort has been incredible. If you're hesitant, don't worry. There is a 120-night sleep trial where you get to test it out and ensure you love it. Bear mattresses include a limited lifetime warranty. Plus, they have other financing options and flexible payment plans. I love my Bear mattress, and I think you will too. If you want to upgrade your sleep, head on over to bearmattress.com/KTO and use code KTO for 40% off your new Bear mattress. This is higher than what's being offered on site, so check them out while you can. Shout out to Bear Mattress for the sponsor. Now, let's get back to the video. So for how this video is structured, we're going to take a look at how the last 10 years have gone for teams that started 0-2. Then from there, we will go back even further historically, looking at overall data. And we'll also look at how 2-0 teams have done, as well as teams who kept losing, going 0-3, 0-4, and so on. Finally, we'll end this video with looking at the greatest 0-2 teams of all time. With that said, let's go back to 2015. In 2015, 9 teams started the season 0-2, and only 2 of them were able to reach the playoffs: the Texans and the Seahawks. The Texans were a weird team. After starting 0-2, they stumbled out to 2-5, and over the course of the season, they trotted out 4 different starting quarterbacks. But luckily, their defense was so stacked that they grinded their way to a 9-7 record to win the division. But then they were crushed 30-0 by the Chiefs in the wild card. The Seahawks, on the other hand, were a much better team from a talent standpoint, and they just got off to a slow start, probably from the mix of a Super Bowl hangover and safety Kam Chancellor holding out for the first 2 games. When they lost that second game of the season, this had been the first time in the Russell Wilson era that they had lost by double digits. Things improved from that point, with the return of Kam Chancellor in week 3. The Legion of Boom had returned to their dominance, posting a shutout versus the Bears. But they still stumbled along for the first 9 games, which resulted in more losses than wins. At this point, there were questions about this once dominant team and if they could even make the playoffs again. Well, they won 8 of their last 10 games to avoid disaster, and they made the playoffs. In the wild card, they got lucky in Minnesota after Blair Walsh botched this easy field goal, but ultimately they met their fate against Carolina in the divisional round. 2016, 8 teams started 0-2, with just one of them recovering to make the playoffs: the Miami Dolphins. This was the beginning of the Adam Gase era in Miami, and they were coming off a 5-11 season where the interim head coach Dan Campbell did a solid job, but not enough to get hired for the full-time gig. Under Gase, the team not only got out to an 0-2 start, but they dropped 4 of their first 5, and were pretty much ruled out of any sort of playoff hopes by that point. With the season on the line, that's when the Jay Ajayi show took place. His back-to-back 200-yard performances were the catalyst to their first 2 wins of what became a 5-game win streak. This momentum carried through the rest of the regular season, as they finished with a 10-6 record, which included one more 200-yard performance by Jay Ajayi. However, this ride came to a crashing halt when they were crushed by Pittsburgh in the wild card. 2017. 8 teams started 0-2, and again, just one team overcame this bad start to make the playoffs: the New Orleans Saints. At this time, the Saints' offense was not the problem. They had been dominant in previous years. It all came down to how bad their defense had been. In 2017, those first two games saw opponents put up over 1,000 yards combined. But the defense quickly improved, which included getting a shutout in Week 4 versus the Dolphins. This was just their second shutout since 1995. After that, the Saints went on to win 8 straight, which was fueled by not only Drew Brees playing as well as ever, but also two spectacular rookies, Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore. They finished 11-5 with a top 10 offense and defense, and those two rookies won Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year. In the wildcard round, they bested the Panthers, and then in the divisional, it looked like the Saints were going to advance when the Vikings were down 1 on their own 39 with 10 seconds and no timeouts. Then one of the craziest plays we've ever seen happened. 2018, 7 teams started 0-2. And just like 2015, Houston and Seattle were the only teams to overcome their slow start and make the postseason. The Texans dropped their first 3 games in 2018, but after back-to-back overtime victories, they won a total of 9 straight games. They went from looking like one of the worst teams in the NFL to potentially maybe locking down the number 1 seed in the AFC. Well, they finished 11-5 and locked in the 3 seed, but then they got worked in the wild card versus the Colts. For the Seahawks, they no longer had a dominant defense, which was apparent in Week 1 when they allowed a Case Keenum-led Broncos to walk all over them. But Russell Wilson was in his prime and found his rhythm after those 2 losses. He finished with 35 passing touchdowns, and the team finished 10-6, winning 6 of their last 7. However, Dallas got the best of them in the wild card after a strong fourth quarter. 2019, 9 teams started 0-2, and none of them made the postseason. The closest team to make it was the Steelers, who actually started 0-3, and they lost Big Ben for the season due to injury. Somehow, a Mason Rudolph-led Steelers at one point were 8-5, but Rudolph also got hurt, and the Steelers had to turn to Devlin "Duck" Hodges. Well, long story short, they blew their last 3 games of the season to finish 8-8. 2020, a total of 11 teams started 0-2, and again, none of them made the playoffs. What's crazy was after the Dolphins started 0-2, they finished 10-6, but somehow there were 7 teams with a record of 11-5 or better in the AFC. Also, just to show how crazy the contrast is from starting 0-2 versus 2-0, there were 11 teams that started 2-0 that year, and 9 of them made the playoffs. 2021, 7 teams started 0-2, and for the 3rd straight year, none of them made the playoffs. The Colts, kind of like the 2019 Steelers, had a huge midseason turnaround. They started 0-3, then improved to 9-6 with Carson Wentz, before they blew the final 2 games of the season and missed out on the playoffs. 2022, just 6 teams started 0-2, and the Cincinnati Bengals are the only one that made the playoffs. This was a year after their legendary Super Bowl run. After dropping their first 2 games in 2022, they stumbled out to a 4-4 record. And that's when the Bengals became their prime 2021 form again. They won 9 straight games to finish the regular season. In the wild card, they bested their division rival. Then they absolutely worked the Bills in Buffalo. All of a sudden, it was the AFC Championship rematch versus Kansas City. This game went back and forth and came down to the final seconds, and the Chiefs ended up putting the game away with a last-second field goal. So far, this is the best 0-2 team in recent memory, and it's not all that close. 2023, 9 teams started 0-2, and 1 made the playoffs. The Texans again. This one was quite a stunner. With a rookie CJ Stroud and coming off a 3-win season, most expected the Texans to be a bad team, especially after starting 0-2. But they found their groove on both sides of the ball. CJ Stroud ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in football, and the Texans finished 10-7 after a wild final game. They went on to crush the Browns in the wild card before they got crushed by Baltimore. And finally, 2024, 9 teams started 0-2, and impressively, 3 of them made the playoffs: the Ravens, Broncos, and Rams. After the Ravens were stunned by the Raiders, they eventually got their crap together, winning 5 straight. And eventually, they finished 12-5 with another dominant Lamar Jackson season, and Derrick Henry nearly had 2,000 rushing yards. In the wildcard, they manhandled Pittsburgh. Then, in the heavily anticipated divisional matchup versus Buffalo, they trailed most of the game, but gave themselves one last shot in the end. That's when Mark Andrews dropped the 2-point conversion to tie, and they lost. The 2024 Broncos were sort of like the 2023 Texans. They had a rookie quarterback and weren't expected to be good. However, they found a formula and started winning games. Their defense was impressive, led by Defensive Player of the Year Patrick Surtain II, and rookie Bo Nix looked awesome during the late stretch. They finished with 10 wins, and then got worked by Buffalo in the wild card. And for the final team, the Rams, they just were terrible early on, starting 1-4. But after their bye week, they turned things around. Stafford found his old form, and Jared Verse emerged as one of the best defensive players in the NFL. In the wild card, they locked down Sam Darnold and the Vikings. And then in a tough, snowy divisional matchup versus Philly, they looked like they were going to lose until they made a furious comeback and nearly pulled off a stunner. But Eagles fans could breathe a sigh of relief after Jalen Carter made an amazing play, and the Rams went on to lose. So there's the last 10 years of teams starting 0-2. Not exactly the most promising data. Usually about 7 to 10 teams start 0-2, and anywhere from 0 to maybe 3 make it to the playoffs. Now, with that said, in the last few years, since 7 teams from each conference make it to the playoffs, it is easier, but it's still tough. Taking a look at some statistics, from 1990 through the 2023 season, 279 teams have opened 0-2. Only 32 of them have made the postseason. That's 11.5%, an incredibly low number. Now, I will mention that the NFL expanded the playoffs to 14 teams in 2020. Now, when 0-2 teams fall to 0-3, the percentage of teams that make it to the playoffs drops to 2%. And when they drop one more to fall to 0-4, there has only ever been one team to make the playoffs, the 1992 Chargers. Somehow, that team managed to make the playoffs and even win a wildcard game before getting blown out in the divisional round. And for teams that fell to 0-5, there has never been a team that made the playoffs. Now, comparing the 0-2 teams to 2-0 teams, obviously way more 2-0 teams do well that season. Historically, roughly 69% of teams that started 2-0 since 1978 have made the playoffs. So all in all, it comes as no surprise that starting the season with a couple of wins is obviously going to improve your playoff chances tremendously. So as we've seen, 0-2 teams have not done well historically. That 2022 Bengals squad is the best we've seen in recent memory, but historically, there is 3 teams that went on to go and make the Super Bowl and win it, and we'll go over them now. In 1993, the Dallas Cowboys were coming off their first Super Bowl victory of the Jimmy Johnson era, but they got off to a slow start. Running back Emmitt Smith held out of the first 2 games due to a contract dispute. And in their first game, they got smacked around by Washington. And then they lost by a field goal to a team they beat in the previous Super Bowl, Buffalo. Then Emmitt Smith came back, and the Cowboys began to roll, finishing the season 12-4, and Smith won MVP. Then they crushed everyone in the playoffs, including Buffalo again in the Super Bowl. At the end of the day, this team was so stacked that if they didn't have Smith's contract dispute, and Leon Lett didn't have his infamous Thanksgiving moment, this team would have likely gone 15-1. So unlike most teams that start 0-2, they could afford it. In 2001, the Patriots were coming off of Bill Belichick's first season as their head coach, where they went 5-11 and had started the season 0-4. 2001 looked like a similar trajectory when the team lost their opening 2 games, and their starting quarterback Drew Bledsoe was out with a serious injury. With relatively unknown backup Tom Brady, the Patriots fell to 1-3 in their opening 4 games. Yet, somehow, everything shifted. The defense started locking teams down, and Brady did pretty decently on offense. The Patriots ended the regular season winning 8 of their last 9 to finish 11-5 and win the division. In the divisional, they won in the infamous snow game versus Oakland, where the tuck rule saved the Patriots from losing. Then after Brady got hurt, Drew Bledsoe stepped back in to help secure a victory versus Pittsburgh in the AFC title game. Then amazingly, with Tom Brady back under center, the Patriots stunned the Rams in the Super Bowl, becoming the second and much more unlikely Super Bowl victor after starting 0-2. Then lastly, in 2007, the Giants were coming off a disappointing 8-8 season where they had collapsed late after starting 6-2. That season finished with them losing in the wild card. It appeared as if more of the same was to come in 2007, after star running back Tiki Barber retired before the season. Then they lost in their opening 2 games, including getting blown out at home by Green Bay. With how poorly 2006 ended, and now with these 2 losses, talks about Eli Manning maybe being a bust grew louder. But then he and the team rallied to win 6 straight games to once again get to 6-2. But deja vu struck once again. They stumbled late in the season, going 4-4 down the stretch. They made the wild card, but no one expected much from this team. That's when it happened. The most improbable and incredible playoff run, possibly of all time. The Giants, underdogs in every playoff game, won 3 straight road games to reach the Super Bowl. Based on regular season performance, the 2007 Giants were the worst team to ever reach a Super Bowl. And who were they playing? Possibly the greatest football team ever assembled, the undefeated Patriots. Entering the game as nearly 2 touchdown underdogs, the Giants pulled off the improbable.